Welcome to another episode of the Meal Prep Monday podcast. I'm your host and founder of Prep Dish, Allison Schaaf. Today, I'm talking about travel and food and how I handle meals while traveling. So before I dive in, a quick reminder, if you have not tried out our time-saving meal prep meal plans, head to prepdish.com/MPM, short for Meal Prep Monday, and you can try out 2 weeks for free. Again, that's prepdish.com/MPM. Let us help you make that decision on what's for dinner. Okay, so I'm diving into travel today. We are just getting off of actually 2 trips, but I'm primarily going to focus on a recent trip that we took to Panama. And I'm not exactly sure when we will air this episode because I'm recording this in September. We may put off airing it until like kind of a heavier travel time because I know a lot of you are probably back to school and maybe not into the travel time of the year. Regardless of when you're hearing this, hopefully this is one that you can listen to and help give you some ideas on how to handle food and meals when you are traveling. I don't know about you, but I feel like for us, especially when you have kids, I mean, before kids, you could travel and, you miss a meal or a meal's late. It's not that big of a deal, right? Or maybe it is. I guess sometimes people don't realize how much they need food on a regular basis to keep blood sugar consistent and all of that. But with kids, it's very apparent when you get behind on a meal or snack. So today I just wanted to give some tips and tricks that I use for handling meals when we are traveling. So this most recent trip that we did, what we did was in the beginning, we booked a hotel, and then for the second half, we booked an Airbnb. And I really liked doing this setup. It was a new city that we'd never been to, and the hotel does a really good job of kind of orienting you to the city. You have a breakfast included, like things are a little more taken care of for you. There's a concierge. It's just a little easier to ease into what, your time is going to look like in that location. So I really liked the balance of spending the first half in a hotel and the second half in an Airbnb. When we were in the hotel, we also, like I said, we had that breakfast included. So I feel like breakfast is one of those meals where it's really important to have and to start the day with it. But I also don't always love to just like have that be one of the like kind of travel experiences. It's almost like, okay, a necessity to figure out and get out of the way. And then I like to use a lot of the other meals like a dinner or a lunch to be more, experiencing something local or having it be, part of the experience. So the hotel breakfast was great. And I also loved with this one specifically, they had, a Panama breakfast that included some traditional foods. Like it was actually like a wonderful big breakfast of, there was a tamale and some fried root vegetables and this whole kind of platter of traditional food. So it did end up being, as a bonus, a great way to try some of the local flavors. And then, of course, they had eggs and some of the traditional foods too. So it was great for all of us to have that first thing in the morning. From there, few tips that I have is number one, if you are gluten-free, find Me Gluten-Free. I've maybe talked about this in past episodes, but Find Me Gluten-Free is a really great resource to find some gluten-free restaurants, which in general, I like to think, I can just show up at any restaurant and they're going to have something I can eat. Usually true, but not always. And especially, when you get into a foreign country and there's a little bit of a language barrier, I feel like sometimes it is easier to go to those restaurants where that there's something on the menu that you can order, or, especially if they have already a gluten-free menu, especially depending on how, severe of an intolerance it is. But if you, have a child with some sort of intolerance or allergy to gluten, then, this highly recommend downloading this app. It's been a great way. It's also a good way. So when we did a trip to Maine, I was able to find a restaurant that had rolls so I could have a lobster roll, and yes, I could probably show up at any restaurant that has lobster rolls and I could have had the filling and whatever, but I really wanted to have the full experience of a traditional lobster roll and not just the filling slapped onto like a piece of gluten-free bread, but like the full thing. So I was able to find that through Find Me Gluten Free. So that app is really good. I'm able to kind of look at that and then narrow down the restaurants. It also is good at doing that. Sometimes it's overwhelming when there's so many options and it's like, okay, here are my options. And then from there, I kind of pick and choose which ones sound like they'd be a good fit, either cuisine wise or location wise, kid friendliness, whatever it is. But I kind of use that as my first filter. The second tip is snacks. This is true, I think, for, you know, regardless of ages that are traveling, just having some snacks on hand is always a good idea. I try and, I pack snacks, but then also, pretty early on, try and find some place where we can get some snacks just to make sure, if you ever would get into a situation where your meal is going to run late or, time, as much as you try and time travel, you're always going to have some issues with the timing working out. And so I think just always having, a few extra water bottles and some snacks on hand can just help ease those otherwise tricky moments. And then once we got to the Airbnb, something that I like to do is, so this would be like tip number 3, is like having a balance of meals eaten out versus in. I am all for eating meals out, trying the local cuisine, like exploring new flavors and, ingredients, and love doing all of that. But sometimes that can really eat into some of your time that can also be used, exploring different, locations and doing different activities. So I think a balance of having some be like this whole experience, and then some of it just being like, okay, let's do some quick and easy meals, some familiar foods, especially for kids. It's good to continue to include some familiar foods that they love and enjoy. Like, we'll buy some apples so they can have those for a snack. So it's not like everything is so new. And I would also include, like, I know I'm saying meals in at the Airbnb, but this could also include something like, buying some bread and lunch meat so you can make sandwiches. And, if you have an all day excursion, you can pack your sandwich and have that to go versus having to like take a break from your excursion to find, your next meal location. Because again, like I do think it is fun to find places to go, but also like this balance of having time for other activities. So having some of your meals already taken care of is really helpful. And I think that's one of the benefits to staying in some sort of, rental location is that you can have access to, prepare some of those meals and have that be, part of the routine. And then last tip is to try new things, but also try new things even when you go to the grocery store. Like, yes, when you're going out to restaurants, it's easy to say, oh, like, let's try the yucca fries instead of the French fries or whatever it may be. But when you're at an Airbnb and you go to the grocery store, is there something, and, maybe it's something easy. Like the thing I always like to look at is like, are there some local fruits that I can buy? And the benefit to that is like, not only do you get to try the new fruit, but you get to see it in its whole form. You get to, especially with the kiddos, like experience, like, how do we cut the fruit and really see what kind of fruit it is versus just having it appear on your plate already prepared and ready to go. They get to kind of see the whole package and what it looks like and be introduced to this whole new, piece of produce. So that's one thing I always love to do is, buy, something new at the grocery store that we can try. And sometimes there's a few different things like, whatever it might be. And it really depends on the location. And, this isn't just for international travel by any means. There's plenty of states within the US where I've gone and, you see something new that maybe they don't carry at your local grocery store. So just using it as an opportunity to try new flavors and new products or whatever it might be. So that's how we handled that trip. I don't know, I feel like it really came together quite nicely. I like the split of doing part hotel, part Airbnb. We've certainly been to plenty of locations where we only do the Airbnb. But I do think it was a nice kind of ease in and introduction by starting out in the hotel this time. So something to consider on future trips you might have, and something I will certainly be considering when we book future travel as well. So that is all I have for this episode. I will be back again next week with another episode.